The Hard Rock Empire is on the air. We are back with another week of podcasting excellence here on the Hard Rock Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. It is time to get to the music of April. We are checking out the music of April the 3rd this week, and admittedly not a huge week in releases, but we did find a couple of great albums that you need to check out. We'll talk about that on the upcoming podcast, and of course we'll go into the vault where Mike and I will each give you some classic albums to check out. Thank you for joining us once again, whether you're live with us here at 7 o'clock Eastern Time on Sunday evening or on the VOD. We are glad you are here. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. Yeah, not a lot of new releases just in general this week. I think even the list before I curated it down wasn't very plentiful, and it certainly didn't get larger as I sifted through the music that I tend to enjoy more than others. We talked about this a little earlier off air, but, we talk about a lot kind of the state of rock and hard rock and metal as far as really not being culturally relevant. And there was those comments made by Billy Corgan and Charlie Benanti recently talking about what they believe was the cause of that. And I think there's definitely something there. But this week I was kind of hit by this story of Machine Gun Kelly and Fred Durst releasing a song together. And in that song, they kind of call out Youngblood. And I just think, if our big headline of the week is a beef between Machine Gun Kelly and Youngblood, I don't think they're doing any favors to the relevancy and just the overall sense of coolness for hard rock and metal in 2026.
I think just like so much of everything that happens on social media nowadays is a lot of these beefs are between people that are by and large irrelevant to your day-to-day life or to the rock community in general or whatever it may be, because the bands we're spotlighting on this podcast probably couldn't care about any of those people at this point in 2026. They're just making great music, going out on tour, trying to make a living in music, which is great. When they see this kind of stuff, they just have to roll their eyes at it because it's like, you guys don't speak for rock and metal. Like, if anything, if James Hetfield came out and made some sort of statement, it's like, okay, you've earned the right to say you speak for rock and metal, but not Fred Durst, not Machine Gun Kelly. Like, they probably shouldn't even speak for themselves at this point, let alone try to make some sort of blanket statement on the health of rock and metal.
Yeah, and I just think, and maybe this is just my bias speaking, I don't really know, but when you just think, historically speaking, any kind of feuds between bands back from like the 80s and 90s just had a certain level of coolness that this one lacks. I don't know. Maybe I'm being unfair, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Well, it also wasn't on social media in the 80s and 90s, which is probably also added to the cool factor because there's almost no cool social media beefs at any point in time. Like, that's probably the least cool way to have beef with somebody is over social media.
You just want the focus to be on the music.
Yeah, and I think for most people it is.
Yeah.
I think, first off, like, there's no reason to throw stones at anybody who's having success. Like, that, trying to say that Youngblood, and I'm not a huge fan of his music. I respect what he does. Some of his stuff is catchy, but to just take shots at him because of what he's done, like, nothing good in life comes from trying to tear down other people who are successful. That doesn't make you more successful because you're taking shots at other people. Like, find your own shine, find your own thing. There's plenty of success out there for everybody, and it's not a zero-sum game. If somebody else is successful, that doesn't mean that your odds of being successful are now that much less. So it's just stupid. It's probably nothing more than to get their name onto TMZ or get their name onto some tabloid website that's going to, add to the few seconds remaining in their 15 minutes of fame in this world. And I don't get it. Like, just focus on the thing you're doing and try to lift people up instead of trying to tear people down because they're successful in some way that you don't like.
Just write good songs.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
Like, because there are a lot of country artists and a lot of hip hop artists that are wildly successful, and kudos to them. Like, it's probably not music I'm going to want to listen to, but I'm also not going to sit here on this podcast and say, well, this country artist is terrible and he's not representing the true country of the, Marty Robbins. And it's like, who cares? Like, they're doing their life. They're making it,
Someone's buying it. I don't know why, but I don't have to know why.
Yeah, lots of people in a lot of cases, and it's like, that's good for them. But it's like, we're going to spotlight the music we like, and, I think spending more time on the stuff you like in life instead of trying to focus on the things that you don't like or don't understand is a much better, healthier way for you to go about living because, in the end, if you're focused on positive things, you're going to think positive thoughts, and it's going to give you a positive mindset, and I think we all need more of that in 2026, I think.
For sure.
So, yeah, it's just another one of those things that's out there that we're not going to, spend too much time on. But, it's kind of interesting to see, unfortunately, that's the kind of stories that end up in the mainstream metal headlines and not about the bands that are out there working hard. Did get one other interesting headline that you mentioned right before we went on the air, and it kind of ties into your vault pick, so it's probably worth mentioning because you've been previewing Sonic Temple kind of every other week. We're going to get to more of that coming up the end of the show today, but a lineup change that people should be aware of if they're planning on heading to Sonic Temple.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't really follow their socials very closely, so this could have been announced weeks ago, and I'm just now catching up to it because it just happened to be pertinent to the stage I'm looking at today. But yeah, evidently the Offspring pulled out, which is unfortunate. I think when you look at the Friday lineup, that kind of leaves a pretty big hole. And I don't know if people maybe potentially bought tickets for that show, for that day, specifically to see them, but they're kind of out of luck now. It's not every day like the front man of your favorite rock band or a rock band that you're familiar with goes off to do a commencement address.
Yeah.
But, that's what's going on, so... Sucks for the people that wanted to see him. I don't think they're doing a whole lot of touring at the moment beyond that. So, but that's how it is.
Yeah, hopefully they'll come around maybe again next year. So, and yeah, if you are planning on being there that day, you had a little bit less to look forward to. But Mike's going to mention one band that you probably should look forward to. That'll be coming up in our last segment of the show as we get to the vault. We got new picks to get to first, which means it's time for me to paste the playlist into the chat of both YouTube and Twitch. And, of course, that's the playlist Mike puts together each and every week. He will go through and he will pick the top songs of the new releases, the ones that really kind of stand out to him, curate them on a YouTube playlist. We go through there, and then we'll pick a couple of albums out of those to spotlight on the podcast. And like Mike said, not a huge week in releases as far as just the quantity of releases. We're not even really speaking of the quality. It's just there weren't a lot of releases on April the 3rd. Before we get to the picks, anything interesting in this kind of limited week that is worth kind of our opening honorable mentions?
Yeah, I mean, we did have a few major releases. We have the newest one from Corrosion of Conformity, Good God, Bad Man. It's their 11th studio album. They're a North Carolina-based metal band. Michael Sweet with his newest solo album, The Master Plan. Obviously, he's the front man of Stryper. What I heard of that was fine. Also, Ultra Bomb, a supergroup. They released their newest album, The Bridges That We Burn. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it on YouTube Music, but it's a supergroup featuring members of Husker Du, Social Distortion, and Soul Asylum. The track I found on YouTube for the playlist was really solid, so I'm kind of looking forward to getting a hold of that eventually.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed that I couldn't track the whole album down. Maybe there was a delay or something like that, but I think that'll be one that'll be worth a full listen at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Nothing really on the re-release box set front, but we did have a few good titles.
All right.
First off, we have the newest from the band Cream Flesh, For Your Ass Only.
Okay.
That one's interesting. I need to check and see if there's a longer title for this band, because they're on my playlist as just... let's see. The band is OXE.
I feel like I've heard of that. Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know if that's also because there's a band called Order and Entropy. I don't know if that's them, but their newest album, Fugnawed from the Scabbed God Cerebrum.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to say it because it's just so weird.
It's a very strange name.
And finally, we get the newest one from the band Wraith Knight of Arcane Magic and Forbidden Knowledge, the Necromantical Passage.
Oh, okay. That sounds epic.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal. That's the Necromantical Passage. So, yeah, those were kind of the more interesting titles that I ran into this week.
Yeah, kind of a thin list of everything this week. It just wasn't a lot of releases, but I encourage you to go through Mike's playlist as always to be able to see if there's some stuff on there that you will like. But in the end, like, and we always review the lists kind of separately. Mike and I kind of came to the same conclusion that there were two really strong albums this week that kind of stood head and shoulders above everything else, even the other good stuff that we liked. Felt like these two were really 1A and 1B as far as like strength level this week. So it was just a matter of who's going to pick which one. And I had picked evidently the first band that Mike is going to mention earlier. So I just left that for Mike this time. So Mike, what do you got for us for the week of April the 3rd?
Yeah, this is the rare repeat pick. We've had that a few times so far. I should probably be keeping like a master list of those bands. I think we have Mega Colossus, let's see, Igor Lapo. Oh man, Dark Heart. I think we might have picked previously two. Yeah, I'll have to get a master list of that. Yeah, it's happened a few times.
I feel like that should get some sort of extra trophy or something.
Maybe,
right?
Yeah. Anyway, my first pick this week. It's a band we talked about back in September of 2025. That was at that time they had released part one of what's going to be a trilogy of progressive albums. Here we are now in April, or when the beginning of April when this came out. It's their 8th studio album. They are from Norway. They are a progressive metal band. They are Green Carnation, and we are now looking at a Dark Poem Part 2, Sanguis.
Yeah, I really obviously dug the first part, and I really dug this part as well. I thought this was really good, and it's funny because the two albums we're going to talk about are different, but just both really strong, and the thing that they do, they do it really well, and I thought this was a fantastic follow-up to part one.
Yeah, so part one that came out last year, A Dark Poem Part 1, The Shores of Melancholia, it's an album that we both enjoyed, and here we are now with part two that is they're still doing what they need to do. This band originated back in 1990. They released a demo, went away till 1998. From 2000 to 2006, they released 5 full-length albums, then went on hiatus again in 2007, returning in 2014. Now they're up to album 8. The band consists of Stein Roger Sordahl on guitars, bass, keyboards, and vocals, Bjorn Harstad on guitars and effects, Kjetil Nordis on vocals, Jonathan A. Perez on drums, and Andre Kirkasola on keyboards, organ, effects, and vocals. If you go into this as a first-time listener, I think whether you'll enjoy it or not can probably be predicted by how you feel about the organ at the beginning of the first track. Because I feel like while their sound is a lot more than just the organ, I feel like that organ is just the predictor as far as, okay, now you know this is progressive. This is going to be an adventure. You're about to go on a journey. If you're cool with that, then you're really going to enjoy what's next. But if you hear that and you're just like, your immediate thought is, oh man, 70s prog, I hate prog, then this probably isn't for you.
Right.
But man, that first track, it's 9 minutes long, but it rips. Like, it's such a good song. Track number 2 slows down and features Sordahl on vocals, which shows that he can hang right there with Kjetil as far as the vocals go. Like, these guys are just immensely talented. It picks back up for tracks 3, 4, and 5. Just, it's such an easy listen for something progressive. And it ends with track number 6, A Lunar Tale, which is just a slower but really beautiful song. The album itself, like I said, 6 tracks. It's 37 minutes long and just super easy to get through. I'd like to purchase the CD because I feel like it's something that you kind of want the liner notes in front of you to read the lyrics as you're listening to it. But as of this moment, the Bandcamp shows that the CD is sold out.
Oh, wow.
There's one variant of the LP that I think still has maybe 30 left that you can purchase, but everything else was sold out as far as physical copies of this album. So hopefully there'll be a restock, or I might just have to settle on getting the vinyl, but I definitely want to pick this one up. As far as standout tracks, I mean, just listen to the whole thing. Like, it's a progressive concept album. You're going to want to listen to the whole thing. The track that I did pick to listen to is the track Sweet to the Point of Bitter.
Check these guys out once again. It's Green Carnation with A Dark Poem Part 2, Sanguis. This is the 3rd track off of this album, Sweet to the Point of Bitter. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
One step behind, holding some more, see to the floor, ignite.
Yeah, again, like Mike said, just to kind of reiterate, it is a very easy listen, which I can't always say about prog rock, which is probably why I picked him the first time, because it is progressive, but it is you go through the album really quickly. Like the tracks, to me, as I was just listening to it without really paying attention to the tracks, kind of meld really well one to another, but not in a way that it feels like a 37-minute song. Like it has twists and turns. It was really well crafted and put together. Something I mentioned in my notes back from September about these guys is kind of the journey they were on, because I think they kind of worked their way through some different sounds to get to where they are. And I think it does feel like they've kind of mastered it now, and it would help if I had the right notes up. I was wondering why I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for. I was looking at my current notes. It says, they started off with straightforward death metal to in their demo to death doom, then progressive doom to atmospheric gothic to melancholic hard rock, and they even released an album entirely of acoustic verses. So when you hear that, to me, it just screams this is a really talented band that could probably put out an album of anything they want, and it's going to be good. And this trilogy they're on is just really, really strong, and I can't wait for part 3. I'm sure, that was September. This is April, so maybe by the end of the year. Don't want to put any pressure on those guys in case they listen to this, but or maybe early in 2027, but really excited to get to finish the story. And like you said, check out the liner notes and really be able to get a good understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of speaking to that evolving style, I think that also shows itself when you're listening to them and you don't think, oh, this sounds like that band. Like so many times on with different subgenres, you'll hear a band, you're like, oh, they sound like these guys. They sound like these guys. Like, you don't listen to Green Carnation and think, this is kind of Dream Theater-ish. It really isn't.
No.
It's not like any of that. It's kind of its own animal, and I think it's for the better.
Yeah, I'm sure they have influences in that realm, but you really wouldn't be able to tell, and I think that's the highest compliment when you have found, and obviously these guys have been doing this for a long time, but to have...
They're their own influence at this point.
Yeah, and you have your own thing, and I think to me that's when you've really made it, when you don't have that immediate callback. It's like, oh, they sound like this. No, they really sound like Green Carnation. So kudos to those guys. They knocked it out of the park again. Can't wait to hear part 3, but you should check out part 1 and part 2 in the meantime. It is definitely worth a listen. I have a new album as well this week, and we are headed to Sweden for my pick. I thought there were 2 albums that really kind of stood out over everything else, and this one was just really strong as well. And again, I really could have gone either way with the 2 picks, and I wouldn't have felt bad about it at all. But this is a hard rock heavy metal band from Linköping, Sweden. This is MarysCreek with The Beginning of the End. These guys were formed in 2004. This is their 3rd full-length album, but it's the first one since 2016, so it's been 10 years since their last album. Great to see them back in the studio. The band is made up of Mats Nielsen on vocals and guitars, Jonas Hallberg on guitar, Roger Blomberg on bass, Alexander Eriksson on guitar, and Anton Westman on drums. Some of the PR talked about it being a album packed with heavy riffs, hard-hitting energy, smooth passages, and strong melodies. That's a pretty accurate statement. If you like your heavy metal with great guitars, you're going to love this album. If you like your metal with great melodic vocals, you're going to love this album. Like, I feel like they found a way to have melodic vocals without having an AOR album. Like, this is definitely hard rock and heavy metal that just so happens to have melodic vocals and not an AOR album that has elements of rock and metal in there. I think they knocked it out of the park. It's got headbanging songs with great melodies. The band's core identity was listed on one of the releases as kind of the darker mood of current times while still hoping or hinting at a hope ahead. I think that's always kind of a great message. You're not just, things are terrible and they'll always be terrible. It's like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's always a great message. Notable that this was mixed and mastered by Niels Nielsen, who's also known for his work with In Flames, Ghost, and Dead Soul. So not surprised to hear the polish level of this album when you have somebody like that sitting there mixing and mastering it. I think that tells you what you're going to get. You're going to get a really clean album that sounds really great, and it's also going to have those melodic tones to it as some of those other bands do at times. But you also have the metal that also some of those bands bring. Overall, it's one of my favorite albums of 2026. I think not a surprise. We get a lot of great music out of Sweden, and this is just the latest, and it's an album that you will absolutely blow through. It's definitely a different flavor of music than the progressive album we talked about before. It's 10 tracks and 51 minutes, but I think you're really going to dig it, and definitely encourage you to check it out. Standout tracks, really the whole thing was great, but if I had to pick 4, it's Alone in the Dark, Childhood's End, The Curse, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is Shattered Dreams. This is MarysCreek with The Beginning of the End. This is the 5th song off of this album, Shattered Dreams. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Memories that haunt, the love I never caught, eyes that watch, the heart that's locked, a dream that's never sought. Broken wings, shattered dreams, the love that lost inside. Silent screams, the soul that gleams, I cannot take that fight.
Yeah, in a week where there wasn't a ton of stuff and there was good stuff, but not a ton of great stuff. The 2 albums we picked to me really stood out, and I really love this album from first listen. I thought this was just really outstanding stuff. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I felt the same way. I think between the vocals and then the guitar tones, like everything about this album was enjoyable to me. And it's not really surprising when you're talking about Sweden, a place that gave birth to melodic death metal, that they can find a way to put melody in pretty much any style of music, no matter how hard, and this is another example of that.
Yeah, really dug this. Again, I can't recommend enough the 2 albums we talked about this week. I think they are among the stronger collective picks we've had so far in 2026, so definitely run out, get them if you can, if they are available. Availability a little challenging maybe at the moment, but hopefully you'll be able to pick those up. Definitely check out MarysCreek, my pick for this week. If you're watching on Twitch, we do need to step aside for a quick 90-second break. If you're not subscribed, we encourage you, if you have the ability to subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. You don't have to use any money. If you have Amazon Prime, you can use your Prime membership once a month. You do have to actually actively renew it. It doesn't renew month to month, but if you're not using it on anybody else, we would love to have your support. It allows us to hopefully eventually do more cool things on the podcast. But if not, if you don't mind sitting through 90 seconds of ads, we would really appreciate it. That helps us as well. And you won't miss any content. We'll come back on the other side of the ad break and talk about The Vault, where Mike and I will talk about a couple of classic albums you need to check out. So if you're watching on YouTube, or you're subscribed, or you're watching on the VOD, just hang tight with us. We'll chat for a minute, and we'll let the Twitch audience come back in about 90 seconds with after this ad break to do The Vault. So we appreciate you sticking around through that. Ads have fired. We are moving on to The Vault in just a moment. But, yeah, you hope that in a week where you don't have a lot of choices that there are some standouts, because we've had some weeks where it was pretty thin and there still wasn't really a whole lot of great stuff. So I was really pleasantly surprised. And there's other good stuff from this week. I just thought these 2 albums we talked about were just, for completely different reasons in a lot of ways, very, very strong.
Yeah, I would agree. And these were 2 of the earlier albums that I listened to this week. So it was kind of nice knowing I kind of had those in hand while I checked out some of the other releases. And there were some good releases on top of that. Chariot's Overdrive, The End of Antiquity was pretty good. Let's see, what else did I listen to? Obey the Sun, Desert Ritual EP. That was good as well. But yeah, these 2, just to me, for my taste, were kind of above and beyond. And thankful considering how few new releases total there were last week.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully next week will be better. Of course, we'll be back next Sunday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. It'll be the music of April the 10th. We'll see if there is more of a selection next week. It'll, the choices will have a hard time topping the choices for this week, but hopefully we'll have more to choose from. And, of course, we'll talk about The Vault again next week, where I will get back to my Journey albums. I'm kind of excited for next week because we're going to get into the Steve Perry era and see how that changes things. And you're going to continue through your yearly albums. So looking forward to that coming up next week. So join us again on the Hard Rock Empire. For those who are done with their ad break, welcome back. We are going to talk about The Vault, where Mike and I will each chat about a classic album you need to check out, and we're each running two different gimmicks. Mike, every other week, has been going through the years, starting in 1969 a few weeks ago, and choosing a classic album to talk about. It could be one that is noteworthy to a specific band, or just one that's kind of fallen through the cracks, or one that Mike's always wanted to listen to. So he'll get back to that gimmick next week. This week and every other week, and of course we're running out of time now because Sonic Temple is going to be here very soon. So he's previewing stages of Sonic Temple. That's coming up in May. If you haven't gotten your tickets, you probably need to get on that pretty soon. But I encourage you, if you're planning on going, to kind of go back. Mike's going to give you some bands that you might want to check out during your time, especially on some of those backstages earlier in the day, things like that. But we're kind of winding things down, which means we're getting to bands that all of us know. I think at this point, we're not too many underground bands left in this. And this is a band that we're going to talk about this week that I really dug some of their old stuff, and then they kind of, and to me, fell off the radar. I know they kept rolling along, but it's a good chance to check back in with these guys. So, Mike, who do you have in the vault this week?
Yeah, so chronologically, I should have been up to Thursday, stage 2, but obviously running short on time with Sonic Temple fastly approaching, so I decided I'd jump around a little bit, and that took me to stage 2 on Friday. The lineup there just seemed like pretty good candidates as far as bands that I'm familiar with, that maybe I haven't listened to an album in a while. That lineup includes opening that stage, Lit, followed by Everclear, Newfound Glory, Yellow Card, Chevelle, Sublime, and was originally The Offspring, but as I mentioned earlier, they have dropped out, so no Offspring. So we have Sublime headlining that stage, which to me, I'm not a huge Sublime fan, so that's a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. I think if I were there at that point in time, I would just be kind of waiting for Shinedown potentially, because, if I'm going to be there, I certainly wouldn't mind seeing Shinedown.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, kind of looking through those bands, and there being a few that I like better than others, there was one that kind of stood out that I really dug their album from 1999. A lot of nostalgia with that one, and I just kind of dropped off with these guys. Like, they've been around, but just didn't keep up with them. So they did release a new album in 2022, so I figured, hey, why not jump on that? With that in mind, my vault pick is the band Lit and their 2022 album Taste Like Gold.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear about this because, again, as I said, I've dropped off these guys as well, and I'm kind of interested to hear, like, did they kind of find their way back to what really made them successful in the late 90s?
Yeah, kind of an interesting story with these guys. I kind of knew back in the day that they'd been around a while, but I didn't realize that, like, the band that would eventually become Lit started back in the mid to late 80s, like 1988. Guitarist Jeremy Popoff and bassist Kevin Baldus started playing music together back in 87. They played a few shows. Then Baldus went on and actually formed a pop metal band with Jeremy's brother AJ. In 1989, Jeremy would join that band, so you have both the Popoff brothers along with Baldus. They would bring in drummer Alan Schellenberger, and that would kind of give you what would become the classic Lit lineup. Kevin Baldus on bass and backing vocals, AJ Popoff on lead vocals, occasional guitars and percussion, Jeremy Popoff on guitar and backing vocals, and Alan Schellenberger on drums, percussion, and backing vocals. 3/4 of that lineup is still in the band today, which is certainly encouraging, with the unfortunate exception of Schellenberger, who sadly passed away in 2009 after being diagnosed with terminal brain cancer a year before. At the time, his drum tech, Nathan Walker, took over on drums, and he stayed with the band until 2016. In 2018, Taylor Carroll joined the band on drums, which is now their current lineup. This band triggers nostalgia in me, like I mentioned. I recall back in 2000 with some friends driving up to Ohio Northern University, getting possibly lost a little bit along the way because that was a time before smartphones, but listening to their 1999 album, A Place in the Sun, on repeat. One of my friends really liked the album. We had it in the car and listened to it a lot that day.
It's a long drive.
That album was just a really enjoyable hard rock album. You think that was kind of the one with their hits on it. My Own Worst Enemy, Miserable, just really good stuff. Not new metal, not anything crazy. It was just hard rock. looking at Wikipedia, because I didn't really think about it at the time, but looking at Wikipedia, it didn't really get much critical acclaim. Like, none of the scores on it were very strong, but according to the Wikipedia, it was an influence on a lot of their contemporaries, including Eve 6, Good Charlotte, American Hi-Fi, the All-American Rejects, and Zebrahead. So they at least had some sort of kudos from the people around them, their contemporaries. So that's not a bad thing. It's funny that Wikipedia also mentions, in reference to this newest album, Tastes Like Gold, that the album's a return to their alternative rock sound after a brief venture into country rock on their 2017 album, These Are the Days. I haven't heard that album, and since I'm not really a fan of country rock, I may skip it and just fondly look at their 2022 release instead. Much like A Place in the Sun, Tastes Like Gold is just an enjoyable hard rock power pop album. It's not new metal, it's not modern, it's rock that sounds like it could easily be recreated live without a heavy reliance on technology. And I think that's kind of the essence of what hard rock should be.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad thing at all. Very similar to the Green Carnation album, this is only 37 minutes as well, but it's also 12 tracks and not 6. The whole album is pretty strong. Like, if you just want to listen to something that's quality rock music, give it a listen. If I was going to list standout tracks, I'd go with Yeah, 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 Mouth Shut, Kicked Off the Plane, Get Out of My Song, Tastes Like Gold, Here's to Another, and also they cover the Cars with the song Let's Go. That's worth checking out as well. But yeah, pleasantly surprised. I feel like this album is what I'd kind of hoped the newest Power Man 5000 would be, as far as you guys have the sound. Just do this sound, and these guys nail it.
Yeah, it's great to hear. Again, these guys' album came out after, when I was in college. So I was kind of familiar with it a little bit there, that classic album that really kind of hit for them. And then just for whatever reason, I kind of they did their thing and I just didn't really follow along with it. But it's great to hear that they're kind of back to that sound. And I think that should potentially make for a really fun show when you get a chance to see them live. I have a feeling that that's going to be a lot of fun. And because a lot of people who attend Sonic Temple are probably similar age to us, like, I feel like there's going to be a nostalgia factor there that really takes you back to the late 90s or early 2000s. And that's always fun when you have a band that can bring you back to a place and time that you remember fondly.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate looking at that stage, because I feel like they should be higher up than they are. But it is what it is, and yeah, it should still be a fun show.
Yeah, definitely check those guys out, and check out this album as well if you want to get back into lit. It's never too late to get back into these classic bands, and certainly hope they have a really good show. So Mike will continue on with that in a couple of weeks, and we'll be getting back into the year-to-year thing next week. But I will continue on with the year-to-year thing. I'm going through basically the list of the one-hit wonders, and there are a lot of one-hit wonders, and there are a lot of them that I don't really know. And this was a year, as I'm up to 1971, I believe, is where we're at this year. There just weren't a lot of great one-hit wonders of songs that I knew really well. So I had to kind of pick one that I at least knew the song and then could kind of work it out from there. So the song we're going to talk about this week is one that almost certainly most of our listeners are probably more familiar with the cover version of this song done by Tesla. The song is Signs, and the original version of it was done by the 5-man Electrical Band. Again, released in 1971. The band, as of the recording of the album that this was on, which is what you see on the screen, Goodbyes and Butterflies, which should give you a clue of what this is going to sound like. The band was Les Emerson on guitars and lead vocals, Ted Garrow on organ and piano, Brian Rading on bass, Mike Bell on drums and lead vocals on one song, and Rick Bell on percussion and lead vocals on 2 or 3 songs. So it had 3 guys sharing lead vocals on this album. Les Emerson was the one who wrote this song and was the one who did lead vocals on the song Signs, which is the first song on this album. The band was originally known as the Staccatos from 1963 to 1968. They're from Ottawa, Ontario. They had a bunch of hits in Canada, including top 10 songs Half Past Midnight in 1967, Absolutely Right in 1971, I'm a Stranger in 1972, but it's obviously Signs that was their biggest song. This was written by Les Emerson driving back on Route 66, returning from Los Angeles to Canada, when he noticed all the big billboard signs obstructing his view of natural scenery. That kind of led into the lyrics of this. It was most famously covered by Tesla on their 1990 live album Five Man Acoustical Jam, which I obviously didn't realize at the time was a tribute to Five Man Electrical Band, the band who did the song Signs. It was Tesla's biggest hit as well. The live version, which is a little more explicit, you don't hear it on the radio typically unless you have satellite radio, was released. There was also a studio version that was released for radio airplay that has the original lyrics that the Five Man Electrical Band used. That also obviously was a big hit. This song the original version peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. The album was released in 1970 and re-released in 1971. The album reached number 52 on the Canadian charts. This was the second of 4 albums released as the Five Man Electrical Band. They had 2 albums as the Staccatos, including a split album in 1968 with the Guess Who, which was kind of interesting. I'm sure the Guess Who would have probably been the attraction of the two on that album. But after Signs, they had one more song, Absolutely Right, that charted in the U.S. Top 40. 3 other songs charted in 1972 and 1974, but none of them met the success. The album is hippie rock. I mean, it is. We talk all the time on this podcast about how certain music will immediately take you to a time and place in history, and how we question whether that's really still true in the music industry in the 2010s and 2020s. But it is absolutely true with this album. It will absolutely, like their original version of Signs is going to make you feel very much like the Tesla version. It was a very authentic cover. The rest of the album is very hippie rock, and I mean that and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. Like, the album is good, but it is very much a place of the late 60s, early 70s. If you are a fan of that type of music, and my guess is you're really going to dig this album. To me, Signs was clearly the best song off of this album. I'm not a huge fan of that style. There are a few bands that, groups like CCR that kind of found a way to do that type of rock in a way that was a little more mainstream. But overall, really talented group. It was kind of fun to learn about them. Probably won't be re-listening to this album a ton, other than obviously the song Signs. But even then, I probably will listen to the Tesla version just because I'm more familiar with it. The standout tracks on the album include Signs, Dance of the Swamp Woman, Hello Melinda, Goodbye, and Moonshine, Friend of Mine. Like I said, definitely has a dated nature of this, but it should in 1971. It's a lot of fun to go through it and kind of learn how they got to write this song. And it was interesting stuff. And coming up in 2 weeks, we're going to check out an album by a group that I think it's fair to say that David Letterman probably got me into this song. Was it not him that was singing All the Young Dudes from Mott the Hoople? It's a long time ago. But we're going to check out Mott the Hoople and the album that is also titled All the Young Dudes. And we'll go into that in a couple of weeks. But yeah, interesting stuff. Obviously, Tesla made that song probably more widely known, but always cool when you have a song like that you kind of know from one band and realize, oh, somebody else actually had it first, and it's kind of an interesting experience.
It is a classic song.
It is.
No matter which version you listen to. I just have to wonder if this is true, that there really was a sign that said long-haired freaky people need not apply. I've never seen a sign like that. Granted, I wasn't around in 1970, but I don't know. That's questionable.
Yeah, I mean, sure, there was some artistic license taken with some of those signs, but obviously in the 70s was a very different time, especially for the hippie culture. I think there was a counterculture going on there, but just
and a lack of respect for property rights. I mean, like if you're gonna trespass, there should be repercussions, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about keeping Mother Nature in. It's keeping you long-haired miscreants out of my yard. I think you got to respect that.
It's interesting because it's kind of the theme of the song and the message of it is exactly the same as Nothing But Flowers. But it's just told in a different way. Like, this is like the man in the song, and this one is like actively angry and like taking it out on the people around him. While in the song Nothing But Flowers, it's much more wistful. Like, man, I wish this would come back. And it's very much like missing something that's never coming back.
I think the difference is that the guy in the Talking Head song has a job in a car.
Yeah, it's true.
So, like,
Not 100%.
he's just kind of cruising, looking at the scenery, like, man, this, like, so much different now.
Yeah.
And the Signs guy's like, dude, I need a job.
Yeah.
Like,
Which he was going to get a job until he, like, pulled his hat off and everybody saw they had long hair. But
it's like they were just in different places.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it was fun to kind of go through it. It's a classic song. Yeah, we're going to get into Mott the Hoople coming up in a couple weeks. And like I said, next week we're going to check out the first Steve Perry album from Journey, which should be very, very different. If you've not been listening to the podcast and listening about the first 3 Journey albums, you should. If you're
It's been a journey.
It's been a journey. If you're a prog rock fan, I can't encourage that enough because there's a lot of really interesting stuff on those first 3 albums. But with that said, it is time to wrap up this edition of the Hard Rock Empire. Big thanks for joining us once again, whether you joined us live or on the VOD. We really appreciate it. We'll be back again next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time or thereabouts. It may be a little bit late because I do have one errand to run next Sunday afternoon, I just remembered. So we'll be with you Sunday evening at some point. Should be around 7 o'clock Eastern Time. The music of April the 10th coming up next week, so definitely looking forward to getting to that. Big thanks to Mike, as always, for his hard work. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support, and a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you are listening. That's going to wrap things up, though. We'll be back with you next Sunday night. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Hard Rock Empire.